Welcome to another episode of Pound for Pound Box Report, episode 440. I'm your host, Michael. Joining me this week, per usual, Gail from nyfights.com, Daniel from 4 Boxing News, and Ian Scarborough. He should join us later, but for the time being, what's going on, Gail?
Hey, we are in. We were at the start of boxing season, if there is such a thing. I know a lot of people are pretty excited for baseball starting this week, but next few weeks are going to be jam packed with great cards.
Yeah, with baseball and the NCAA tournament, hasn't not been much boxing this weekend, but as Gail noted, starting this weekend and particularly in the month of April, a lot of fights is going to happen. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Box Report, Pound for Pound Box Report live YouTube show, podcast, site, etc., is discussing all things boxing. The motto is when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, it will get discussed. If you want to find out any and all information, the site is the place to go to for the time being, p4pboxingreport.com. If you wish to email us, you can do so, p4pboxing at p4pboxingreport.com. On the site, you'll find links to where to find Pound for Pound Box Report stuff all over social media, the links to the YouTube channel, the Facebook, IG, Twitter page, also links to where to find us all over the podcast realm, whether you listen to Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or for the time being, Google Podcasts. They're set to shut things down April 2nd, I believe. Wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, you can find Pound for Pound Box Report. If you wish to donate, Cash Me and PayPal donation links on the site. Let donation be the best nation. It wouldn't matter to us if it's $1, $2, $5. Anything that you could spare. If you have any extra change on hand, if you would like to contribute, we will be grateful. Last but certainly not least, for my fellow fitness enthusiasts, please check out the link to BODI, formerly known as Beachbody On Demand, body programs for any and all suitable fitness goals and interests. If you're looking to lift weights, check out programs like Lift 4, Lift More, Body Beast. Check out also HIT, CrossFit style, more hardcore cardio-based programs like Morning Meltdown, 645, 6 weeks of the work, Chop Wood, Carry Water, the P90X 1, 2, 3 series, they're still up there. The Insanity series are still up there. If you're looking for a boxing specific program, and I see Daniel's getting ready to join us right now. If you're looking for a boxing specific program, please check out 10 Rounds. That is a 6-week program, 3 days a week of boxing based cardio, 2 days a week of resistance, weightlifting. And while I finish that, what's going on, Daniel from 4 Boxing News and Ian Scriber?
Going on, gentlemen, and Miss Gail.
Yeah, I'm glad you corrected yourself there.
You can use the generic guys if you like.
Let's get things going. What much action happening this weekend, as was noted earlier. Main card took place in England. Matchroom promoted card. Let's start with the main event. I'll go to you, Gail. Latest versus always. Dalton Smith, kind of a tester fight, as I like to call it, fighting Jose Zepeda. Zepeda, multiple time world title challenger. He's up there in age, but he's always dangerous because of his punching power. It was a decent scrap for the first 4 rounds, but Smith caught Zepeda with a body shot. Zepeda really couldn't recover in round 5, so Smith got the stoppage win. It's going to be the interesting thing is what's in the plans for Smith afterwards. He's sure to be world ranked following this win. Eddie Hearn was offering up 2 proposals. One is shoot for a world title shot in the next, say, 12 to 18 months. But there's also a domestic showdown over in England with Adam Azim, right? If you are Matchroom and the handlers of Smith, would you try to shoot for world honors, or would you kind of take a step back, get the domestic fight against Azim, particularly if it offers a good payday?
I say you go for the domestic fight because the guys at the top of the division, aren't going to want to play right now. Dalton Smith isn't well known enough. He, based on his performances, which have all been excellent and improving fight by fight, it's the risk versus reward issue. But fight between Smith and Azim in the UK is a big, big fight. That's a main event fight. And why not? Why not get that rivalry going? If it's a great fight, it doesn't have to be the only time they clash. That's how great rivalries get started. So I say you make that fight now, continue to build his resume, continue to work his way up the rankings. The day will come when either the top guys in the division move up, move on, start to decline, and then the time will be right for Smith. No matter what happens, he'll be in good position, and he can afford to keep working his craft. And in the meantime, as we have seen, activity matters. You never know when you're going to be in a position to step in. An opportunity presents itself. You're at the right time, the right place, and you're prepared and your skills are sharp. So I say take the domestic fight, A, because probably it's going to be your best offer right now, and B, it's probably also the one you could get the quickest, assuming Azim doesn't duck him, which that remains to be seen. But I don't think he will, because I do think that's the best possible fight at the right level, with the right 50-50 nature and intrigue for the domestic audience. So go for it.
Kind of stole my thunder a bit as I'm going to
Well, hey,
fight.
Now it's smart people think alike, right?
That's all right. That's all right. While Hearn basically daring the camp of Azim take the fight, Daniel, Azim, talented fighter, right? But he's 21 years old. So in theory, he could probably wait until getting that kind of opportunity. Gail kind of teased us saying if Azim will, she posed the question whether Azim or the camp of Azim will take that fight with Smith. Do you think they will do so?
I think they will. I think they will because right now, for both of them, for Azim and Smith, the main option right now is the domestic scene. Because while Smith did a really good job in this fight, finished somebody in Zepeda that it really, really made Jose Ramirez Rodriguez program work to win. Even though he did that as impressive and it was a world level challenger, neither guys, particularly Smith right now, you can say he's ready for Devin Haney or he's ready for Teofimo Lopez. So I would say they would have to stay in that area. And that's probably the main reason why Smith in that post-fight interview just was laser focused on Azim. It's a good fight. Both men are in that same skill level where they're either British level, starting to get to close to European level. And it's something that will make a lot of money domestically. And particularly when it comes to Azim, even if he loses, you mentioned he's 21 years old. He has time to rebuild his resume, especially staying in the domestic scene for a little bit. So it's not so much of a risk compared to Smith, where if they really try to overplay their hand and try to say, okay, we'll try to target and get Devin Haney within a year or get Teofimo within a year, he's not ready. He's just plain not ready yet.
On the undercard, Daniel, you had a battle of the world champions, right? Sandy Ryan, who is WBO champion at 147, defended her title against Terri Harper, who's WBA champion at 154. 4, right? We talked about this fight last week. On and during that discussion, I thought this was kind of I'm not gonna say a toss up, but it was that it would be a close competitive fight. Not the case, as Ryan was boss. She dominated from the opening bell, uh, battered and punished Harper in the first 3 rounds, particularly rounds 2, 3, and 4, excuse me, and got to the point where the corner of Harper and the fighter agreed was like, no more, no mas. Didn't come out for the 5th dominant win by Ryan, coming off of the win, or excuse me, the disputed draw with Jessica McCaskill. Am I being hyperbolic in thinking that as it stands right now, the live recording of this episode, could Sandy Ryan be the best women's welterweight in the world?
It might be. She might be starting to get there by default. Mainly, like I said, because the other players are not being feeling mature yet, and then the other one, like I said, the main one would have been McCaskill, but she's already reached a point where you could see the trajectory starting to go further down than it is going up. So this was a good performance, and it wasn't a performance that I was afraid was going to happen, particularly because of the weight cut that Terri Harper had to do. We have to remember she jumped, I think, 4 weight divisions to go from 130 to 154. Now, granted, the main reason for that jump is because we all remember she literally had her brain reset standing up. But then jumping that much, literally going up 24 pounds and doing a fairly good job staying there. She was, like I said, Terri Harper's very, very good at 154. But you go from that and now you're going to be doing another weight cut again after your body's probably gotten used to going to 154. And like I said, the punch resistance just wasn't there. Ryan, after figuring out like Harper's defense, it started becoming target practice. And the sequence that landed into the corner, into Harper's corner in the fight was perfect. A perfect illustration of it, because literally within the last 10 seconds, Ryan got through Harper's guard, landed 3 flush punches straight to the face, and Harper just wasn't able to respond. Even though she wasn't knocked down, she just wasn't able to respond or counter those shots. So luckily, Harper's corner recognized that scenario, and make sure the fight was stopped. And you could tell that Harper knew that she was not going to be doing much better with the way she reacted. But now Ryan's going to have she has a very good particular case for, first of all, making McCaskill come back to England for a rematch, and to say you're the best welterweight, because now you can tell that, hey, I just beat the junior middleweight or super welterweight champion. So she definitely now has a case.
And the interesting thing here is, Gail, is that you got Ryan WBO champion, you got Natasha Jonas IBF champion, who came off of the exciting close win over Michaela Mayer back in January, right? McCaskill is fighting Lauren Price, defending the WBA belt against Lauren Price. If Price wins, you can see there's a scenario, not the scenario, you will have 3 of the 4 welterweight champions from England. Whether Ryan is the best at 147 or not, if Price defeats McCaskill, you could have a little bit of a tournament, domestic tournament, to determine who is the best at 147.
Without question, Ryan will end up facing the winner of the May 11th fight in Cardiff between Lauren Price and Jessica McCaskill. And no matter who wins, you're going to get a unification fight. You either get a rematch of a very controversial fight, certainly controversial in the UK, where a lot of people thought that Sandy Ryan won. I absolutely had it scored for Sandy Ryan. It was close. But boy, Lauren Price is showing enormous confidence going into this fight. If you've watched her social media, oh yeah, she's acting like she's not being recklessly confident, but just very matter of fact. Yep, I've got this. And again, in the UK, a domestic contest, this one at a higher level than the one we just discussed, which for the last fight I neglected to say would be for a European title, which here in the United States or North America, kind of a non-factor. But that is a very important title to a lot of guys in the UK. This one is also a title fight, unification fight. The next one will be, no matter what. I'll tell you, I didn't think Sandy Ryan took any time to figure out Terri Harper's defense. She just went straight at her. And Harper's corner did exactly the right thing. That was an excellent example of a good, smart, timely corner stoppage. And Terri Harper did not complain, did not protest. She didn't even put up one of those, oh, don't stop the fight, fake protests. I mean, for show. It was, yeah, man, she has my number today. She just does. And in theory, Harper should have been the bigger woman, but Ryan looked huge next to her. And I do think, while the women are great about agreeing to go up and down weight divisions, I think that 24-pound spread back and forth was probably, in hindsight, too much to ask. Harper gave the best effort she could, but some days you just don't have it. That is not a commentary on anybody's skill level, anybody's career history. We all know, anybody who's even just recreationally, a regular gym rat knows some days you just don't have it.
Or in this case, some days you're just up against a significantly better fighter. And I think it was more that than just Harper, quote unquote, not having it. I don't know if they fought 10 times, how many times Harper would beat her. Once, twice at the very most. She looked that superior in the ring last weekend, and we'll see where she goes. Hearn in the post-fight said he was going to go over to Sky Boxer and see if he can make a match between Ryan and Jonas. Jonas probably looking for a significant big money fight before she calls it a day. Earlier this year, she said that 2024 is likely to be her last year in boxing. Hearn even said that he's willing to let Sandy, go across the street and fight on Sky to make that fight happen. Let's see what happens in terms of her future, because she's training in Las Vegas now. As I noted last week, she did some sparring with Clarissa Shields to get ready for Terri Harper, and she looks like she's getting better and better, to Gail's point, with each fight. Let's move on to some news here. Not much. So if y'all want to add something, please do. Subriel Matias, who won the IBF belt at 140 pounds last year, finally getting back into action. He's going to fight Liam Paro June 15th, I believe, in his home country of Puerto Rico. Daniel, been a while since Matias has fought in his home country. Your thoughts on this upcoming matchup against Paro? I think, look, Matias arguably the biggest hitter at 140, but I think Paro, what he brings to the table, he could give Matias a tough go. At the very least, I think this is going to be an exciting fight.
First of all, it's great to have Matias back in the ring. Really, really good to have him back in the ring. And it's a good thing to have a hometown fight. This is probably going to be I think this is one of the fights that might have the makings of I would say, an underground or a sleeper thriller, because much like how we talked about with Ryan as far as trying to make sure who's the best at 147 for the women, there's still cases to be made still with 140 for the men too, and all the other divisions. And Matias does have something to prove, and I do think this is going to be a really, really good fight. And granted, hopefully Puerto Rico's not going to suffer anything similar to what happened the last time they tried to have a homecoming fighter coming in with the Serrano situation. I'm actually looking forward to this one.
Matias has been talking big-ish, Gail, about what he'll do to the other big fighters, prominent fighters in 140 pounds. He gets a chance to show how good he thinks he is against Paro.
Yeah, this fight was suggested back when Paro had his victory on the undercard of the Haney Prograis fight. We sort of saw this coming. Why it took another 5 months, I'm not quite sure. But yeah, it's a great matchup. It's a great test for both. Subriel Matias is a guy that, again, the top names, not super eager to get in front of him because he appears to be just a buzzsaw in the ring. So Paro will give us another eye test for Matias. And, everybody's trying to read the tea leaves with him, depending on who's standing in front of him. Is he as good as he appears to be? Is what we're seeing a mirage, or is it not? And none of the top names want to get in front of him and find out just yet. Down the road, the fight I want to see might blow my head off is William Zepeda and Subriel Matias, but we'll leave that for the future.
That'd be really, really good fight now that you mentioned it.
It might be exhausting just to watch it. I mean, damn.
That's fight of the year potential right there, no doubt about it. Going back to you, Gail. Look, last time we saw Deontay Wilder over in Saudi Arabia, didn't just lose, but lost badly to Joseph Parker. Didn't put up much of a fight. Could have got knocked out really if Parker had shown some real initiative. At the time of the loss this December 2023, a lot of speculation whether he would fight on. A lot of people in the boxing community felt that Bomb Squad doesn't have it anymore. We're now hearing word about him in a potential fight against Zhilei Zhang, coming off of how bad he looked against Parker. And I know Zhang is just coming off of a close loss to Parker as well. Do you think it's wise for Wilder to still be entertaining a guy of this size, of this punch resistance, and of this punching power?
Whether it's wise or not, what other options does he have at this point? Let's think about it. It's Saudi money. It's a big check. They are both at the point where it's win or go home. They're both facing very, very similar circumstances. Both of them had poor performances in their last fights. And at least what we can say is of a upcoming matchup between the two, at least they will have both had recent activity. Zhang more than Wilder, actually. But, did it shake the rust off Wilder? Did it give him a little extra boost of desire to get back in there? Did he like the feeling of finally being back in the ring, despite the fact that he struggled so much? It's going to show whether they've got anything more to offer or whether their careers have really come to an end. And in a way, to me, it's more surprising that Zhang is there because it looked like he was on an upward trajectory at, surprisingly older age, but he didn't really have a lot of mileage on the tires. He hadn't fought a lot of rounds, and the age didn't seem like it mattered until it did, until Parker ran rings around him. And who in the world thought that at the very beginning of 2024 we would be seeing a fight between two opponents, both defeated pretty soundly by Joseph Parker? That's their looking across the ring at each other in the Last Chance Boxing Saloon. Go figure. But that's where it is. They don't really have anywhere else to go, and money will make it worth their while. It will be a cash out for somebody, unless they really want to be a gatekeeper, and I just don't see that for either of them.
It's one thing to talk about this fight potentially happening, Daniel. Excuse me. Do you think it'll ultimately get made?
Oh, sorry, could you repeat that?
It's one thing to talk about this fight potentially happening and rumors and whatnot. Do you think we will ultimately see it?
I tend to agree with Gail. They may not have a choice because with Wilder, particularly with Wilder, because with Zhang, he at least put a little bit more serviceable effort against Parker. Wilder, he just looked bad in that fight with Parker. And that eliminated a very, very lucrative payday for him, even if it is with blood money versus Joshua. So they may not have little choice but to make the fight. Now, if you're Wilder's team, would you want to risk it? Risk another tall southpaw fighter whose left hand is pretty heavy? Do you risk that and but level it out with the fact that Zhang, unfortunately, is a bit long in the tooth for boxing? And even though he's been a little bit more active, that does catch up with guys. The main question's got to be is, do you, Wilder's team, have enough confidence in his right hand still being the best sleeper in the sport to be able to negate the things that Zhang can do, similar to what things that Tyson Fury could do because of his size? That's going to be the key to it. They may not have a choice to make it, but it is Saudi money. It is blood money. So there's probably enough to do it. And for either guy, particularly with Wilder, it's the only way to probably get back into possibly trying to get that Joshua payday back.
One more story here then that just popped in my head. If you wanted to, if there's something that's on your brains and you want to talk about, I'll give you the floor. It involves one Tim Tszyu. Now I know he's fighting this weekend against Sebastian Fundora, so it may be a little bit presumptuous of us to talk about this, for me to bring this up. Excuse me, but there's a lot of word on these boxing streets about who Tszyu could fight later on this year if he were to beat Fundora. We've heard about Crawford and Tszyu being in negotiations, but over the past 12 to 24 hours, and I've reached out to some folks in our group of boxing writers and boxing insiders. Right, there's word that the camp of Tszyu is considering a fight against Errol Spence. Now, we hadn't seen Spence in the ring since getting destroyed. Let's not beat around the bush here. Getting destroyed by Bud Crawford last July because of how he lost, because of the way he performed in that fight. One, people suggest that Spence go up to 154. The other one is the other thing regarding Spence is that people feel that he may not have it anymore due to his injuries and due to how much he got beat up by Crawford. Spence, coming off of that kind of defeat, going up against a prime, strong, bigger Tszyu, would that be wise, Daniel and Gail?
At the risk of repeating myself, what are Earl's options? What are his options? It's a little bit like Zhang and Wilder. He just really doesn't have a lot of other paths. And I think if he's going to try to maybe cap off a career, get a good solid payday before he really finally calls it a day, it's not a bad option. It's a great option for Tszyu to test himself against a common opponent of Crawford's and use it as a measuring stick for himself. I have a hard time believing he'll get as solid a victory over Spence as Crawford did, but I think he probably would get a very good one, perhaps very close. We had so much anticipation for Spence Crawford, it would be hard to live up to that, even with a great performance. But that measuring stick is a really important tool in the case of a fighter, heading towards the top of the division against big names like Tszyu is. And, his momentum is tremendous right now. But it really is going to rest quite a bit on whether Crawford exercises the right granted to him by the WBO to become a mandatory challenger should Tszyu win Saturday. And, we all assume he will, but they still have to fight. If he's the winner, he's standing victorious at the end of Saturday night. In the next few weeks, it's going to be very interesting to see how all of that shakes out, how everybody decides to handle it. Just because a sanctioning organization orders something doesn't mean a fighter has to comply. They still do have their options.
What say you, Daniel, about all this talk popping up over the last 12 to 24 hours about a possible fight between Spence and Tszyu?
Well, from my understanding, it looks like Bud has made it known that he is going to or has already applied for that mandatory status. And from what I've seen, making this fight with Spence because of what Crawford's doing might actually force Tszyu to vacate the WBO title because WBO is looking to enforce that mandatory, which would mean that if there's any chance for him to still remain the champion, it would have to be through the WBC because the WBC is going to allow for a voluntary defense for Tszyu should he be successful up in the next couple of days. That being said, there's always something to say when it comes to proxy fights. And this would be a proxy fight to test yourself against somebody like Crawford. If you're Tszyu, it makes perfect sense to try to see a fighter that you can gauge and see how you can measure up compared to what Crawford did. Because we have to remember, Crawford took Spence apart. But if you're Spence's team, I say this with all due respect. What the fuck are y'all thinking? I thought they had the common sense to just say, like, you know what? Let's not do the rematch with Bud. We saw the results of that. So now you're other option then is a fighter that's younger, that's hungrier, might be naturally bigger at this stage, and who's going to use this fight as a proxy to you and Bud. That's not a good plan, especially with rumored dissension between Spence and the trainer, Derek James. So if you have that going on, if you're anywhere near Spence's team, you do not do this unless you get thrown a boatload of money. It has to be almost equal to Saudi blood money for you to do this at this point, because it is not gonna come in and be good for you. Because say what we want about Bud, like, okay, he hasn't been active since that fight with Spence, but neither has Spence. Tim Tszyu has been active. We're going to talk about him in a few minutes. And you are not going to go in and try to do that. You're just basically becoming 154 pound. You're literally taking the place of Keith Thurman. As far as at the stage of the career your fighter's going to be, the only difference is going to be is the layoff is going to be shorter.
Floor is yours, Daniel and Gail. Anything that's on your brain or you've been hearing being rumored or talked about boxing wise, the floor is yours. Anything on your brains?
Well, I'm not much for rumors, but we do finally have a replacement opponent for Andrew Maloney. Carlos Cuadras, who was his opponent, suffered an Achilles tendon rupture, which is a nasty injury. And, he posted photos on his social media after surgery looking pretty cheerful. He's just a pretty cheerful guy, personality in general, but boy, that is potentially a career-ending injury. I wish Cuadras well. But Top Rank scurried around to try to replace him, and they did, thankfully. Maloney will now face Pedro Guevara of Sinaloa, Mexico, former WBC light flyweight world champion. He's 41-4-1 with 22 knockouts. All his losses were, I think all but one of his losses were in title fights. He faced Kenshiro Taraji. He faced Cuadras. He lost a majority decision to Taraji, a split decision to Cuadras. Those are really good outcomes, I've got to say, for losses. So that's, that's not a bad fight at all. So that's the co-feature coming up on the undercard of, remind me what that's the undercard of the Lomachenko-Kambosos fight in Perth, Australia. And that's on May 11th. Same day, by the way, as the fight we were just talking about between Lauren Price and Jessica McCaskill.
Absolutely. You been hearing anything, Daniel?
Well, this is news, and this might actually break the heart of Manny Pacquiao's accountants. But the UK, the British Boxing Board of Control, and their governing body for boxing, I think it's UKAD, the United Kingdom Athletic Department, went to court recently, and they've actually just won the appeal over a court case that the verdict was that that Conor Benn could resume his boxing career in the UK. UKAD and British Boxing Board of Control appealed to have the suspension still be served, and they've won this case. So if they're gonna try to make this weird fight between Conor Benn and Manny Pacquiao, it's probably gonna involve the blood money.
I don't look. I'm not going to be an apologist for Conor Benn, but given the multiple positive tests for Dillian White, you allow him to fight in the UK, but you don't allow Conor Ben to fight in the UK. You fighting to the high heavens to keep him from fighting in England. Doesn't make any sense to me. It just doesn't. I don't see no distinction between what White was accused of multiple times and what Ben was recently accused of prior to his proposed fight against Eubank Jr. I think that was last year. Um, um, Enough is enough with this. Let Ben fight. If you're gonna allow Dillian White to fight in England, let Conor Ben fight in England, and that's all I'm going to say about that. Let's move on to some fights here that's going to happen. Because there's so many fights this weekend on the 29th and the 30th, I'm going to split things up. Let's start with the fights that's going to happen on the 30th, right? The aforementioned Tszyu Gale non-title fight. It was supposed to be against Keith Thurman. Thurman had to withdraw due to a biceps injury. He's fighting Sebastian Fundora instead. Last time we saw Fundora in the ring, he got he didn't just lose, he got knocked out in one of the biggest surprises of the year. I can't get that the way he got clocked out of my head. We talked about Tszyu, how he's fighting regularly. He's very, very strong. I don't think he's the most skilled guy in the world, but he applies pressure. I think he has a better boxing brain than people give him credit for. And against a taller, longer, significantly taller Fundora, because I can't get what happened to Fundora, that knockout loss last year, I just don't see a scenario where I cannot favor Tszyu in this fight.
I think that's pretty obvious call to favor Tszyu, but I'm not as troubled by that knockout, I think, as you were. Fundora, up to the point that he made that fatal mistake and got caught, he was leading handily on every scorecard. I mean, he was winning the fight, and he blew it. He made a mistake, he dropped his guard, and Mendoza was smart enough to capitalize on it. So good for him. But Fundora, the most important thing to me is that he absolutely in interviews has said, hey, I made a mistake. I blew it. I got caught. That's how you learn from it. That's how you vow to yourself, I'm never letting that happen again. He's getting back on the horse. Good for him. He seems to have a great attitude about it. He was willing to step in. I like that. Tszyu is willing, importantly, to say, oh, you're switching it up? I'm going to fight a guy. I'm going to fight a southpaw instead of an orthodox fighter? Okay, fine. I'm going to fight a guy who's damn near 8-9 inches taller than me.
I mean, 6'7". I mean, 6'7" guy fighting a 5'10" Tszyu. I don't even want to put the face off because it literally looks like a little kid looking up to a grown man.
Yeah, no, Tszyu is not 5'10". Trust me, folks. He's not that tall. If you've seen any of the media workout photos, face-off photos, I mean, it is comic. Though, what it does bring to mind, everybody, is the recent fight between Ray Vargas and Nick Ball, who had about the same height differential. And Nick Ball, once he figured it out, was getting the better of Ray Vargas. So, yeah, it's going to look odd. Fundora also has a habit of not quite fighting as tall as he is, which isn't going to help him. But good for him. You know what? He is willing to bet on himself. He got the opportunity. He didn't turn it down. He could have. And honestly, his fight against Sergey Boachuk was probably just as tough, if not tougher, because Boachuk is an absolute buzzsaw. And we're going to get a better main event out of it, honestly. Whatever injury it was that Thurman suffered the report of a biceps injury. I think the boxing gods intervened. I really do. They don't always smile on us, but I think they did this time. It's a great test for Fundora. No shame in it if he can't climb that mountain. It's going to be a more interesting fight. Might be the same outcome. If you were forcing me to bet my hard-earned money, which I do not do, it would absolutely go on Tszyu. But those who are completely writing off Fundora, that's a mistake. That's absolutely a mistake. He does have a chance. He certainly has a puncher's chance. So Tszyu needs to watch out. One thing, though, we do know about Tim Tszyu, he's got a great chin. So I'm looking forward to it. We'll be ringside reporting for NY Fights. And honestly, the way that card has reshuffled and how the lineup looks, a lot of people weren't too thrilled when we first heard about this being the inaugural PBC on Prime card. You know what? It's not bad at all. And due to the change in the opponent in the main event, the pay-per-view price dropped. You can't hate on that too much.
True. And it better had dropped. Should have been that high to begin with, but that's just my personal opinion. On the undercard here, Daniel, I think this has an opportunity to be potential fight of the night here. Listen, whatever you want to say about Romero and his fight to win the title and whether Barroso got hosed for the way that fight was stopped. Listen, Rolly, he is the champion, WBA version at 140 pounds, right? Fighting Pitbull Cruz, who to me is still a lightweight, junior lightweight, more than he is a 140 pounder, but he's exciting. He's going to come forward. Rolly's not going to do much moving backwards. And Rolly can punch. However long this lasts, both guys are there to be hit. Both guys will hit. As a result, this can't help but be an entertaining bout. Whoever ends up with their hands raised in victory.
This fight in many ways, it is just it is the audition to try to get a rematch with Tank. And it may actually turn out to be a pretty decent fight. Now, Rolly's obviously changed new trainers. So we need to see if there's been any improvement on the defensive front. And I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt. Like I always say when it comes to fighters and new trainers, you always got to give them at least 3 fights for them to see they fully mesh. So you have that. And and like I said, Pitbull making sure he's trying to get that payday that he thought he probably had secured with Tank, but as we know, Tank is going to be fighting Frank Martin. So this is just trying to line up to see who can fight him afterwards. I know he's small. He's small for the weight class, and we know he's very, very compact. But unless Rolly shows tremendous improvement on defense, I would probably lean towards Cruz on this fight because he's going to come forward. He is going to attack the body when he needs to. And like I said, he knows how much of an opportunity this actually is. So I would not be surprised if he comes out guns blazing, and I would not be surprised if he catches Rolly clean. And we've seen Rolly, if you catch him pretty clean, there's not much he can do.
Yeah, so, defense is not Rolly's forte at all.
Yep. So unless there's a dramatic improvement on defense, I would actually put my chips on Pitbull winning this fight.
Also on this card, Gail, Erislandy Lara. Look, we coming off of a 2-year layoff. Longtime fans of the sport know that Lara has been one of the better fighters at 154, 160, but he's 38, 39 years old, and which in Cuban years means he may be 40 plus. Defending his belt, version of the middleweight title against Michael Zerafa. Forget the age. If Lara is anything close to the fighter that we remember him back in the day, he should win this fight. He should outbox Zerafa. The only way I see he loses is that he's old and he doesn't all of a sudden doesn't have any legs anymore.
Yeah, it's going to be a question of what condition he's in, how his skills are. But, Zerafa has, youth on his side. Zerafa is, being put on this card to appeal to the Australian audience and as a favor to Tszyu. So he's, riding the coattails a little bit. So it's a smart matchup, honestly. It to me is among the weaker matchups on the card. I understand why it's there. PBC's doing Lara a favor. He's been a real good soldier for them. Lara has always stepped up when he has been asked to. And once again, he is being asked to do so. I'm not thrilled about it. There are far better matchups on that card, but I don't hate it. And I understand why it's on this card.
Last fight that we're going to talk about on this card, Julio Cesar Martinez versus Angelino Cordova, Daniel. Cordova, I believe he fought Kenshiro Teraji in the past. I could be wrong on that. The thing about this is with the champion, the buzz that he had, let's just say 2019, 2020, is all but gone now. He's not the same fighter post that beatdown he suffered against Chocolatito Gonzalez. The last few years has been marred with injuries and postponements and cancellations. I still think he struggles to make 112 pounds. This fight is a wait and see in terms of what does El Rey have left anymore, even though he's relatively young at age 29. To me, he seems a fighter who's older than his years suggest.
It looks like mentally Martinez has never really fully recovered from not just losing to Chocolatito. This is the way that he lost to Chocolatito. And I don't think he has really fully mentally recovered from that. Even though he's had victories, he's never really looked as impressive as you mentioned it. If we have to look at it as a pre-pandemic deal, that kind of tells you now this day and age how far long ago our hopes for him high were. So I think in his mind he knows he still has going to be wanting to prove something, but he also probably has to get over that mental block to show that, yes, you're still a champion, you're still young, you can still technically be right now in your prime, and to have the best fights be more ahead of you instead of behind you. As long as he can get over that mental block that Chocolatito fight put in his head, I think he'll be able to win fairly easily, because like I said, he's not even 30 yet. Because he could be in his physical prime now. He just now has to get into his mental prime in order for him to really recover that luster that we saw for him before the 2020s.
And all of those fights are going to be in Las Vegas on Amazon Prime. And I think I just heard word that that fight is going to be just on Amazon Prime only. No other outlet in Australia. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys.
I can't say I have any idea about that, but check your local listings, as they say.
Quick word on this card. More from the promotional side and the lack of promotional push in terms of Amazon. This is supposed to be their debut card, their debut event with PBC, and we've seen little to nothing in terms of a real push from their end in terms of this card. What does it say about uh, Amazon Prime their relationship with PBC, and their entree into the sweet science?
Nothing. Nothing. It's the off Broadway out of town tryout. It's the beta test. They don't need a lot of eyeballs on this. They need to work out the kinks. They need to see if they like the broadcast team, and they've made no particular assertions about this being permanent when they announced the assignments of the team. It's a trial. Now, Amazon Prime, or actually more properly, it's Prime Video. It's the Prime Video division. It is not Amazon by brand name. Prime Video is the main streamer for boxing in Japan. So it isn't as if they've never ever done this before. And as we know, in the US, Prime Video has also gotten into sports for soccer, for tennis, and for football. But they haven't done boxing in the United States. So this is a rollout on a card where they can, truly test things. The idea is you do these kind of cards to see what breaks, see what doesn't, see what works well. And this is intended to tee up and smooth out the rough edges, decide what they like and don't like, before it really, really matters when Canelo steps into the ring in another month. And that's all it is. That's all it is. Everybody can just calm down. It's just because they're testing the waters, and that's a smart thing to do.
And all of those fights
Consider it a rehearsal, folks. That's what we've got.
And all of those fights are going to happen again in Las Vegas on Saturday the 30th, on the 29th in Arizona. Card on ESPN Plus, I believe, not regular ESPN. The main event of this card is Oscar Valdez, Liam Wilson, Gail. We all remember there's a common opponent for both guys, and that is Navarrete. Navarrete stopped Wilson in 11 rounds. Very, very exciting fight, right? Wilson had Navarrete down in round 4, I believe it was. A lot of people still feel it was a long count to the detriment of Wilson. Navarrete also beat Oscar Valdez by decision. This fight, word is just dropped, is going to be for interim belt WBC version at 130 pounds. I don't know what to make of Valdez at this point in his career. There were always flaws in his game, in my opinion. He hasn't looked good. He hasn't looked that great since the knockout win over Burchell. We're going to be really honest here. He didn't look that great before the win over Burchell. So the more I've seen him, the more it seems that stoppage win over Burchell was an anomaly. Against a Wilson who has that big left hook, he showed it against Navarrete. Valdez is the better boxer, the more experienced fighter, but I think he have more mileage in the tank. I think he can win Valdez when he's at his best, but I give Wilson a better shot than most. That's to you, Gail.
This is a very important fight for Oscar Valdez. To his credit, he knows that. He understands that. It is a home game for him, in front of the crowd in Arizona on Friday night. It's surprising he's found himself in this position. His record is only 31-2. That really shouldn't be fatal, but his losses have been bad losses, unfortunately. What's he got left? We're going to find out. I don't think Liam Wilson should test him. This is an Australian fighter who's only had 15 professional fights, who's 28. He's hovering in the bottom of maybe the top 20 at super featherweight. He's a fine sort of comeback opponent. And he did fight recently. He had a fight in December, unanimous decision, and actually a fairly close one against a guy that shouldn't really have challenged him. He doesn't have a tremendous amount of power. Out of his 15 fights, he has 7 knockouts, along with and both his losses have been stoppages. So one of those was to Navarrete. One of them was to a domestic opponent a couple of years ago during the pandemic. Given how this is teed up, it's a legitimate fight for Valdez, but it's a fight he should win. And maybe that does put a little extra pressure on him, knowing that everyone expects him to win. He should win. There's no reason he shouldn't. So if he does, then he's got some troubling questions he needs to answer. I don't think that's going to happen. The question remaining is the manner in which he wins. He really does need to get a good knockout out of this fight. And they've given him a guy whose only losses are stoppages. So, it's there for him really on a silver platter. Is he going to dig in? We're going to find out.
I mean, look, he says this is going to be his first fight to regaining a world title. To your point, the opportunity is there. I still have questions about him. It would be nice to see him get a win by stoppage. It would be nice to make it an easy fight. I just don't know if he can make things easy at this point in his career. I go to you, Daniel, to talk about this upcoming fight, which I say for last because I think it's the best fight of the weekend. I think it's one of the best fights of 2024. Comment here in the live chat from Rennie Box Young. Appreciate you listening. If you've not done so, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. And that is the fight for all the marbles, Daniel, at 105 pounds, unified women's strawweight champion Seniesa Estrada, Yokasta versus unified strawweight champion Yokasta Valle. I'm going to get both of you into this discussion, starting things off with you, Daniel. They talked about fighting each other for a couple of years now. Supposed to fight not July, but summer, fall last year. Estrada coming off of a hand injury. Confidence is a thing that should not be discounted here. And I think that Valle is coming in with all the confidence and all the momentum. She's been active. She's been winning against really, really good competition. Estrada said that she was only able to use that she's only been able to use her right hand, which was the injured hand, I believe it was, only since since New Year's Eve of last year. We all know that Superbad is a very, very talented fighter, has one of the unique styles in the sport, right? But given the questions about her hand, given the momentum that Valle coming in, is Seniesa Estrada in more trouble than most people think?
If you would have asked this question to me last year, I would have said no. But Valle, not only her performance has been better, like you mentioned, her confidence has gone up leaps and bounds since this fight. Because it did, like I said, when the fight would have happened last year, it would have been seen as a formality for Seniesa to be the clear favorite, and it would just be a hurdle for her to be undisputed. But unfortunately, Seniesa, her last few performances have not been exactly what we were accustomed to for the past few years when you think of a Seniesa Estrada fight. But Valle has been matched up fairly competently by Golden Boy. They put her in favorable crowds to Costa Rica. And she has not disappointed. And that's very, very key in a fight like this, because we can say that Seniesa, maybe her head, maybe looking past Valle, and she probably has been for a little bit in various fronts. And I would not be surprised one bit if one of her most bitter rivals could be ringside, one Marlon Esparza. I would not be surprised if she was also ringside as well to watch this, but it is also a proxy fight against Golden Boy when you think about it for comes to Seniesa, because the main reason Golden Boy signed Valle, well, let's be blunt, is to get Seniesa back on one of their cards after signing with Top Rank. But now Valle has proven to be a very, very decent return on investment. And that's going to be the main test to see how it goes. Are Seniesa's gripes outside of the ring going to get in her way against an opponent that has not lost confidence, in fact, gained it, and is probably more ready now that she's been the past few years to challenge her? It is going to be interesting to see, especially if what she's saying about her hand is true. Because that's literally saying if she hasn't been able to fully use her hand until essentially this year, that's not, it's not even going to be, actually, it'll just be barely be 4 months of having the full usage of the hand. That's in normal range for training camp, but may not be enough coming off of a hand injury. Because we've seen a lot of fighters not be the same, even coming back from hand injuries. So this is now truly, to me, a toss-up fight. And I would not have said this a year ago. But and even though I think she is still the underdog, probably betting-wise, I'm leaning towards Valle, because she has been focused, and as much of a chip on her shoulder as Seniesa has, Valle, because she's been overlooked for much of the buildup of this fight, her chip is bigger. She has a bigger point to prove, and that to me is probably going to be what puts her over the edge against Seniesa.
The keys for both ladies, Gail, and your thoughts about what I still feel are the lingering questions about the health of Seniesa Estrada, particularly when it comes to that hand.
Yeah, she is going to be fighting on a repaired hand. She says it's fine. She's been training hard. Both women have the skills to win, no doubt about it. They're both tremendously talented. They are punchers more than they are boxers. I expect they will both bring it, and they are both fueled by the fact that they do not like each other at all. I've never really heard a detailed explanation as to how that all started, but it doesn't matter. It is very real. If you think that Seniesa Estrada and Marlon Esparza have a internal spat going on, the one with Valle is just as big, if not bigger. So it's going to come down to who wants it more. And that is often what happens in boxing. If they are both equally prepared, they both have excellent skills, they can both punch, they can both take a punch, they're both willing to fight through adversity, it's going to come down to will versus skill. And I do think Valle has the edge there. I think Estrada has accomplished a lot of what she set out to do at the beginning of her career. She has also gotten a lot more out of the ring opportunities, which she's done well at. She has been working on the commentary side, and she is excellent at it, really good. I think she also likes it. She's been modeling There are a lot of other ways to make money when you get to the point where Seniesa is. And, deep down, she's got to sometimes think, damn, I've proved myself more than once. I've done all the hard stuff. What's still driving her? What is still driving her? Whereas Valle, comes from a country where has not had this big a stage, not had quite this big of opportunities, but she is an enormous star in Costa Rica. She can sell out arenas there. Our commenter here, Renee, aka Cesar, is one of our writers at New York Fights based out of Mexico, and he recently interviewed Yokasta Valle. And you can see in the comments, he does.
Yeah, let me post some of these up while you're at it.
He's spoken to her recently, within the last week, and I'm reading his stuff. He's the guy that has heard her and has interviewed her in Spanish. So, and I do think that makes a lot of difference when you're not having to hear someone through a translator or through a second language often. I do think it's going to be potentially not even just the fight of the card on Friday, but the possible fight of the weekend. I think it's going to be a banger. I really do. It's a close one. And if you forced an opinion out of me, I agree with Daniel. I think Valle may just take this in what will be quite a surprising win to a lot of people. I am hoping that both women feel that they have given their very best, fight absolutely up to the level of their skill, and may the best woman win.
I'll read some comments off from Renee here and run them off right quick. He says, yes, Gil, I think the same. Her drive, discipline, and determination seems superior to me. Also says that I have this a really tough fight for both, but I give the edge to Valle. He said if Estrada wins, I won't be surprised because she is an elite, she is elite, excuse me, but I see more in Valle. Renee also says that there can be a surprise, and it could turn out to be a one-sided fight, actually. He also says, lastly, that, yeah, I feel Estrada Valle should have been the main event with all due respect to Valdez and Wilson. I agree wholeheartedly. When we discussed this card over at Three Kings Boxing, .com, for those who may not know, I'm a senior writer over at Three Kings Boxing. Shout out to the entire crew, staff, contributors over at threekingsboxing.com, your source of pure unadulterated boxing information. When Bo, head of media relations and senior writers, was giving us the rundown, myself and 2K was like, wait a minute, how come Estrada and Valle is not the main event? What's wrong with Top Rank? So I agree with you 100% in that, Renee, your last comment. The argument can be made that the best fight so far in 2024 was Natasha Jonas's close win over Michaela Mayer, right? Women's fight. I think that this upcoming fight between Yoka and Superbad can be just as good as that fight that took place in January. I hope that it lives up to the hype. I hope that both ladies come in healthy and fighting, bringing their A game into the ring. If that happens, and if Estrada is at her level best, right, I give her the advantage to win. Because she's a little bit more versatile, because uh, 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 she can create more angles in there. And I think she's the slightly harder hitter. Um, I would give her the advantage. Now, that being said, in the last couple of outings, we've seen some flaws in Estrada, particularly on defense. She's been getting hit a lot, particularly with the right hand. Um, Her last few opponents have been against more seasoned, more experienced veterans, right? Who are not fooled by the movement, who don't get moved by the movement of Estrada. She's getting that in Valle. Uh, uh, and again, because Valle has been more active, I think she has the potential to be really the sharper fighter coming in. But on balance, if everything's right, I'm going with Estrada by the slightest of margins. That doesn't mean that Yokasta Valle can win. I would not be one bit surprised if she wins this fight. I'm going to go with everything on even terms. I'm going to still go with a super bad Estrada. I think we're going to end things on that note. Going around the panel here. Well, let me just say there is a fight happening in Japan on the 31st. The Shigeoka brothers were supposed to fight. Jinjiro Shigeoka was supposed to um, fight about defend the IBF strawweight belt against a guy by the name of Andalis. That's been postponed due to medical issues by Andala. So instead, on the 31st in Nagoya, you're going to have Yadai Shigeoka defending the WBC 105-pound belt against former WBO champion Melvin Jerusalem. Not going to preview that or talk about that much here because I want to get this particular episode quick because there is a card happening right now on Pro Box TV. I want to watch a little bit of that. So I just want to mention that fight of note. But back to the panel here. I want to thank, excuse me, technical issue on my end. I want to thank Renee for his comments. Thanks for mentioning it, Gail. Rivalry here, heavyweight division in the UK, also on the 31st. Uh, Frazier versus Clark. These two guys don't like each other. Frazier's been talking up, calling a fight against Clark for a while now. They finally get into the ring. Quick word on that, please.
Yeah, this is a domestic fight for the British and Commonwealth heavyweight titles, which are held by Fabio Wardley. Frazier Clark is going to face him. This is a fight that
Yeah,
is,
Wardley. I said Frazier and Clark. My bad. Wardley and
yeah,
Frazier.
Ward
Frazier
Frazier.
Clark.
Actually, I wrote that myself in the comments here, tipping you off. Yeah, this is a fight the UK fans are looking forward to, and an unusual Easter Sunday card. It should be fun and certainly action packed as long as it lasts. Yeah, and these guys don't much like each other. It is something you can see here in the U.S. If you have DAZN, it is on DAZN at 1 o'clock Eastern time. It's the start of the card, 1 o'clock Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific time. So if you've gone out to breakfast on Easter, church, brunch, you have family in town, whatever it is, if you could convince them to take in a little boxing for Easter Sunday, there you go. You got a card to watch, courtesy of DAZN and Sky Sports.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So, going to go around the panel here. Begin the show with ladies first. Going to end the ladies show with ladies first. Gail for nyfights.com. For those who want to talk the sweet science, let the folks know where they can hit you up.
Things are good in boxing right now, everybody, and we are writing about it at nyfights.com. We will have a full panel of Zoo Fundora predictions for you tomorrow.
Indeed, and for those who want to talk boxing, for those who want to talk pro wrestling, for those who want to talk the NBA, especially when it comes to all things Miami Heat, getting ready to close in on the playoffs, and we all know NBA fans that uh, when it gets playoff time, that's when the Miami Heat play their best. Daniel from Four Boxing News, the inscriber for those who want to talk boxing, wrestling, all things Miami Heat. Let the folks know where they can hit you up.
Yes, folks, like I said, it's RAWKZ99 and it's on everywhere. Twitter, guess Screw Elon calling it X. Blue Sky, Mastodon, Threads. They give them Spoutable. Like I have all those links on there, mostly active on Twitter, and we're getting close to the halfway point in the year for sport. And once starts picking up for Canelo, it's gonna start getting really kicking off, and I'm glad we're getting kicked to the high gear fairly soon.
And I purposely left out the story on Canelo because I found it ridiculous. His comments about a proposed fight with David Benavidez, 150 to 200 million dollars. That's just dumb. The more he talks when it comes to Benavidez, the more the less respect I'm having for him. And he's been getting railed over the coals by who name it, Bradley, Ward, um, just about most pundits within the box community, minus Canelo Alvarez fans over his recent comments about uh, David Benavidez, and that's all I'm gonna say about that. What it's just a joke, just a disappointment. Canelo Alvarez is turning into, and I'm gonna leave it at that. For those who want to talk boxing, music, fitness with yours truly, you can do so on Twitter, because I refuse to call it X, Brother JRSC. For those who want to talk boxing, music, fitness, and fragrance, we want to check out my fragrance of the day, my scent of the day for my fellow cologne and fragrance lovers on IG and TikTok. You can do so, Brother JRSC on IG, TikTok, Brother JR76 on Twitter. On the next episode, it's going to be a load of recaps. Um, a recap of Seniesa Estrada and Yokasta Valle, a recap of Liam Wilson and fighting Oscar Valdez. Again, that's going to be for the interim WBC belt at 130 pounds. Estrada Valle is going to be undisputed status at 105 pounds. We're going to do a recap of Tszyu and his fight against Sebastian Fundora. And I think that's going to be a junior middleweight title now for Zoo's WBO belt and the vacant WBC belt at 154 pounds. We will do a recap of Romero and Isaac Cruz. That's going to be for Romero's WBA belt at 140. Going to do a recap of Lara and Zerafa. Lara defending his WBA 160-pound belt, and recap of Martinez and Cordova. Martinez defending his WBC belt at 112. Going to do a recap of Yadai Shigioka defending his WBC 105-pound belt against former WBO strawweight champion Melvin Jerusalem, and also do a recap of Wardley and Clark, the heated rival between those two guys, and we will do a preview of Richardson Hitchens. He's getting back in the ring, fighting Gustavo Lemos. Strange story with Lemos, former WBC, former mandatory challenger at 135. He got stripped of his mandatory status at 135 because he failed to make weight for a recent bout. He's moving up to 140 pounds right now. Diego Pacheco, fighter who we think a lot highly of, at 168 pounds. He's going to be fighting on that card as well. That's going to be April 6th in Las Vegas. We'll do a preview of those fights. So again, I want to thank Renee for his comments in the chat. Renee from nyfights.com. Correct me if I'm wrong, Gail. I think you're on mute, Gail.
That is correct. He is our correspondent out of Mexico.
And who recently interviewed Yokasta Valle for her upcoming match against Seniesa Estrada. So I want to thank Renee and all of his comments in the chat. It's greatly appreciated. Again, if you're checking us out on YouTube, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. To subscribe, you get notification of all future episodes. Also help with the overall algorithms. For Gil of nyfights.com, for Daniel of Boxing News and the Inscriber, I'm your host, Michael. This has been episode 440 of the Pound for Pound Box Report. We will see you guys next time. Everyone have a good evening. Good night.